Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Today on TMC, we have very special guests, Javier and Shannan Labrador, with Flip Your Marriage.
Javier Shannan Labrador. We've been married for 28 years. We have two girls that are both married. And they both got married this year. So we have had an eventful year.
Congrats.
It's only September here. And so both girls are married. So of course, two son-in-laws. And so we are also full-time on the road with our marriage ministry. So we run 24/7 marriage. In April of this year, we left to take the work that we do on the road across the U.S. And so we have been, in essence, still doing a lot of the work that we do, but expanding it by taking it on the road. So doing our boot camps, our workshops, podcasts, our coaching, all of that, on the road. And so we have been through 11 states and about 6,500 miles or so. We have been doing this for marriage ministry for about 13 years plus. With a background as a pastor, background in ministry. So very entrepreneurial in a lot of the work that we've been doing as well. And yeah, it's just an awesome privilege for us to be investing in the couples the way that we're able to do that right now.
Yeah.
So you guys are moving around doing marriage ministry and you're traveling. How exactly does that work?
Probably late last year, just navigating through a season and understanding, like, hey, what's next for us and what we want to do. And we started looking at also like what was taking place with marriages, the calls that we were receiving, the increase in coaching that we were having, the support that people were asking for. And we're also looking at like how, honestly, and we all can notice that COVID has shifted and changed things. And because of that, we were thinking, how can we reach people in such a way that maybe they might not travel? Maybe other things, there may be some fear still for them. How do we reach people where they're at? And maybe their inflexibility, we can be flexible and meet them. And so when we made a decision, we sold the house. We were based in California at that time. We sold the house on the coast of California, 75 degrees all year long, right?
Wow.
So we sold the house in California, sold the cars, a lot of our possessions, and bought a 38-foot fifth wheel, gutted it, remodeled it, wrapped the entire thing with the marriage lab, our caricatures on it, our slogans, and then hit the road. And so in essence, we are traveling through the US and right now, of course, like I said, 11 states. And what we're doing is when we go in, we're ministering in campgrounds, we're working with couples, we're connecting when we're there, just being on mission. We're literally calling ourselves marriage missionaries. Because we believe that marriage is a mission field and marriage has a generational impact. And so we said, how can we actually lay everything on the line, because that's what we believe we're called to do, and really invest, support, resource as many couples as we can.
Our schedule is available on our website and social media. So people that live in other states that know we're coming can schedule a coaching appointment. And then the other part of that would be we work with churches. So a church might be hosting us for a weekend workshop, or we might be in town to do a boot camp. So that's kind of how we reach different couples.
And logistically, it's hard. It is tough. Simply for the fact of trying to navigate where we're going, where we're going to be, but we're very flexible, and that's what we're learning, to be very, very flexible.
Yeah.
But the impact that we're having is crazy. The people who encounter us, just yesterday in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, we're at a coffee shop and somebody drives by and just sees the logo on the truck, sends us an email and asks if we can meet with you. We saw your logo, want to know more about what you're doing. Ends up being a really incredible meeting and connection that will lead to more. And that's happening all the time by just being out there and being available. So logistically, there's a lot of pieces to it, and we're kind of hitting state by state. And some of it's driven by what we might be doing within that state also.
Wow. That is awesome. And I really applaud you all for what you are doing. Cedric and I started TMC to be a part of helping marriages because we believe that with the right tools, with the right support, with the right help, that we could all work together to decrease the divorce rate and help people to stay together. And you guys have sold it all and are now moving around in the marriage lab to help save couples and save marriages. The marriage mission, I love that. I love that. And we are definitely excited about that and having you all to share with us on this evening.
Absolutely.
So you all are known as the marriage flippers. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how did you guys become the marriage flippers and what does that look like when you're working with couples?
We all have a deep love for watching remodel shows and seeing old things become new again. I mean, come on, this is what we live for. So when I was thinking of that concept about 2 years ago, I was like, I really feel like if we were to like call ourselves something or what it is we do, we are taking something old and making it new. Because when a couple is going through really hard times, and one spouse is maybe struggling with things that that spouse has done to them or some problems that they've encountered. The thing is that that spouse doesn't want the same marriage that she just had for the last 10 years that were horrible. She wants a new marriage. She doesn't want to go back to the same
but
thing.
What we're finding is guys would come to us and keep saying like, I need to save my marriage. I go, your wife does not want that marriage.
Nope.
That's the marriage she wants. Like what she needs is the new you. What she needs is an invitation. 2.0, right? So that's that whole part of like flipping. And it wasn't so much about flipping just the marriage, but a mindset of understanding like what does this actually look like to change how I view my spouse, I view marriage and what God intended to be. So
because you know what, we can all do the behavior modification all day long and we can get people to do the things, but it's got to change up in the heart and in the mind for it to really take effect and really be flipped. Because behavior modification, we've seen it, and they usually come back because they're the roller coaster couples, we call them. They're good for a couple weeks and then they hit rock bottom again because they just are modifying their behavior. They didn't really transform anything on the inside.
So the marriage flippers is just, it's quirky, it's fun, people relate to it, right? It's on the side of our fifth wheel, it says the lab's marriage flippers. And that sparks the conversation, right? But it's been a powerful thing just for people that understand the mindset of like moving from where they're at to where their marriage can be, what God can do, and see that change, that transformation, that restoration. So for us, the key thing is like we talk about, we're restoring hope, redeeming stories, and building strong marriages. So that's what we're doing when we're flipping that marriage.
This is awesome. And just to think about that, the moment you started talking about flipping and the flip, and I love HGTV, so of course I've seen the flips. So when I started to think about that, and you said the wife or whoever is not happy or is not working for them, they don't want that old marriage, because when they go in and flip the home, they gutting things out. Sometimes they're replacing things. Sometimes they go in there thinking it's going to be a 2-day job and it turned into a 3-month job. And so we know what you just said is true, Shannon, to change from the inside, the mind, flipping that and how we think about marriage and how we think about our spouse and how we respond, and all of those things have to happen in order for us to have that new marriage. I love that. I love the concept of that. And I think it is so beneficial for people to have kind of that visual of thinking about that, flipping process of a property. I think that's awesome.
Yes.
And what I love about it is that this really talking about decreasing divorce rate, because most people think they can leave a marriage and marry somebody else like the grass is green on the other side. And it's like, you know what? You can have that same thing in this relationship. You can have this same relationship. You can have this same joy. You can have this same peace. You can have the same thing in this current relationship, and you don't have to move on.
But do they have the mindset to put in the hard work? Because going to another where the grass is greener, still got to water it, still got to mow it.
And there's a lot of stuff in that grass you just don't see from over the fence, right? And things you don't want to step in, right? And so ultimately that's a big thing, like with the work that we do, is like shifting this marriage mindset, right? And that's a big piece of the whole flipping. Like you have to have vision, right? If you're going to remodel something, you got to see where you're going. You have to have the vision for it. You have to make a plan as you're navigating that. So all those pieces for us are playing into it.
Yeah.
So when you're working with couples and the couples have decided that they are ready to flip their mindset so that they can flip their marriage, could you give us like maybe a couple of foundational steps you would give them to start off with in the beginning?
Yeah. So I think that the decision to make the change and transformation. So we tell couples like, well, especially guys that I coach, like, listen, I'm not here to save your marriage. I'm not here to give you a better marriage, right? I'm going to work on you, and we're going to work on you and what needs to happen with you and what God wants to do in your life. And in turn, your marriage will be impacted
by that.
And so we start there with them as number one thing, like, okay, this is great. We're going to meet, but what we're going to do now is we're going to work on you specifically. Right? Yeah, but my marriage, no, I didn't do that. We're going to get there. Right now, we're working on what needs to shift and change in you in this mindset. Because what's happening is you're not truly seeking to understand. You're not truly seeing what's actually happening. You're not hearing, you're not listening. And so we are developing something right now, but kind of a core, we like to simplify things. We don't want to overcomplicate it. 5 steps to better this, 6 steps to this, 7 steps to this. All these steps are overwhelming. So we're narrowing it down. So we tell couples to start in a place that we first want you to understand what it means to restore hope. So we want you to understand how to have empathy for one another. And so we start in that place. What does it mean to have empathy? To actually carry somebody's burden, to understand what they're feeling. And so we tell them, you think she's reacting this way because of what you've done. But in reality, there's some deeper things that they might be dealing with, that her reaction is based out of family of origin. It's based out of a wound, out of a hurt. And so when you start to see her in a way that, oh, this is not about me, she's reacting this way, maybe out of this area, it could be out of how you acted for sure. But understanding how to have empathy and how to seek first to understand and be understood. And our whole core thing with that is like, we tell everybody, like in marriage, you don't have to, you get to. Right. And that's kind of a tagline for everything that we do, because that's the mindset shift. No, you don't have to. You
could leave.
You could go right now. But when you get to, it becomes a privilege and honor to serve that person.
Of the valley that you're in, or the mountaintop that you're sitting on. It's a privilege to get to walk alongside each other, because it's not if you're going to go through stuff, it's when.
Yeah, it's true. So we talk about empathy first with them, and then we move into, okay, so we need to understand, and we tell this to somebody who is of faith or not, that you need to understand what it means to have grace for one another, right? In these moments when there's brokenness, in these moments when that person is not your favorite person, right? When things aren't going up and to the right. So having empathy, having grace, and then we really dig into what it means to serve one another, to be two servants in love, to be mutually submitted to each other, to really understand to serve first, and understanding the beauty in serving one another, and how that changes and transforms a marriage from the inside out. When I look at every opportunity I have, 2 things: to love God every day I get up, and find ways to serve my spouse radically. And so we see when they begin to shift those things, it begins to change everything. And then people are like, well, what about communication? What about, well, no, that comes in. And when you begin to have empathy, you understand how to communicate better with them, how to connect. When you're having grace, like you step back, you're like, oh, I'm going to communicate in such a way where I'm heard and I'm understanding them. And we're really in this great empathic dialogue back and forth in our communication. So those are some core things that we've been working with couples, consistently.
I'm going to tell you this. I wish you guys 23 years ago when we got married, these type of things wasn't around. And I'm glad, that you guys are able to be here to share with someone that may be in the verge of giving up and quitting right now, throwing in the towel, to say, you know what? I can flip my marriage. My marriage can be flipped. My marriage can be transformed because I'm transformed.
Like it's a difficult thing, especially like for men. Right? You move in this place of saying to lay down my life on behalf of somebody else, and because they get stuck in this whole like, well, but she's not doing it. But like, no, we're not talking about her. Like you right now, in doing the right thing regardless, pursuing, laying yourself down. And I promise you that as you do those things, her wall that went up very quick, it'll start coming down, maybe brick by brick. and you keep doing it day in and day out, intentionally pursuing, loving, serving, grace, empathy, it will change and transform, and it'll blow you away what happens. We've seen it happen, right? You probably have seen it happen. If guys just got that, right, and they truly understood that piece, I think it could shift so many things.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about this, because you have some people, you may have some husband or wife listening right now. So you know what? I'm going to serve my husband. I'm going to do it. And they serve for a week and they don't see any results and they quit. Let's talk about that.
Wow.
Well, that's where the mindset comes in, because they behavior modification something, and now they're like, I'm going to do this for a week, and then they didn't get a response and they shut down. So how do you serve selflessly without looking for something in return? That's hard, because we've all bought into this mindset. I don't even know where it came from, of this marriage is 50-50, marriage should be fair. No, it's not. There is no such thing as 50-50. There is no fair. There are times where he might be carrying 90% of our marriage because of a season I'm in. I was thinking back to when we came home with a newborn from the hospital. I was like, I know how much you did in those first 8 to 10 weeks. You literally did everything, because I had a C-section and I was taking care of a baby. You know, that's a 90-10 window. And then there was a time in our marriage when Javi went through depression, and I was carrying our family for us emotionally because he couldn't at that time. So there is no 50-50. So you serve. The way that I've come to grips with that and come to terms with that is, I don't serve Javier because it's the right thing to do or it makes our marriage good. I serve Javier because I want to honor God, because this man is the son of God, and I want to honor God's child. And that's how I've had to see it the last 20-ish years, because we went through a really rough 5 years. And that was in the beginning, and that was on me. So that's for another podcast.
And I would agree.
And I like that. I like that, Shannon. I think that's important. And sometimes, especially, and I want to see if you would agree, sometimes as women, we have that issue, you know, when we feel like we're serving and we're doing the right thing, but we don't see the results. Maybe we serve a little bit longer than a week. Maybe it's been some of us may have been serving for years and haven't seen the results. But the mindset that you said you have to have, and I agree, because I'm the same way. I serve my husband, I serve Cedric because he's God's son, and God is looking at how I love his son, how I treat his son, and then vice versa for him. God is looking at how he loves his daughter and how he treats his daughter. But that's between him and God. I'm only responsible for my part, and I'm only called to do my part. And so I think when we have that mindset and we start to look at it from that way, but again, both individuals doing that, then we do get better results. And that's how we flip marriages. That's how we transform them.
You know, on the guy's side, it's just recognizing, like, we're called to love our spouse as Christ loves the church.
Yes.
He gave his life for the church. He laid down his life. Like, that's difficult. That's hard. But
are you ready to die? Are you ready to die?
And not just once, but like at every moment. And because we're just built in, I have these desires, I have these needs. Oh, yeah, you do. But I promise you, bro, as you dig in and you serve and you honor God first, when you guys are dealing with issues of, you know, whether it's like pornography or lust, whatever they're dealing with, like, listen, this is about you honoring God first, not your wife, God. And I promise, if you do that well, you're going to honor your wife. Period. That's a natural overflow, right? And so I think as people start to get that mindset about that, it's really, really good.
And the other thing, Javi and I were talking after I had a difficult coaching call this week, is, you know, we stand at the altar and we make this unconditional covenant. We get into marriage, and like you just said, I served for a couple of weeks and I'm not seeing anything in response. Well, guess what? You just made it conditional now.
Well, you just made it.
You just shifted from covenant to contract.
Wow.
And, that's where we're trying to get people to shift their mindset, is that we look at a marriage as a house with no back door. Okay. Once you're in, you're in. So there is no
There's
back
no
door,
getting out.
you know, because I have a lot of women who I coach that ask me, Shannan, so when can I ... How many more times will he have to do this before ... Then we're putting conditions on your marriage and you're looking for a back door. And I want to help you shift your mindset to serve and love and pursue your husband, regardless of what's being done to you. Obviously, we're not talking about abuse in any way. We're just talking about some general things.
Yeah.
And
in comes grace at that moment, right? How many times do I need to forgive? How many times do I need to tell him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So how many times were you forgiven? How many times God asked you? I mean, it's a very simple thing, but it's a great reminder for people. Like, okay.
Well, and I always share my testimony when we're doing a boot camp or workshop that, you know, because people love that so much. Like, how many times do I put up with this? How many times do I put up with that? Javier endured a lot for 5 years. And I always tell them, you know, after the first year, he could have gone to a pastor or a close friend and been like, listen, I have tried to make this marriage work for a whole year. Not changing. Do you think that I could move on? He could have done it after year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, but Javier did not have that mindset. He kept pursuing me regardless of what was being done to him. So I don't know anybody who can really hear that story, that testimony without being like, okay, I hear you. They're just like, I'm like, you have, it's perseverance. Hard work and perseverance are not things that are congruent with this generation right now of young people getting married. So they struggle.
Yep. And seemingly everyone, a lot of times, not everyone, but a lot of times people are looking for the back door. And I like that analogy. There is no back door. Once you're in, you're in. And if we think about that, we actually talked about I think it was a post that Cedric and I saw, and this was last year, but the post was talking about why marriages today do not last the way they did when our grandparents or our parents or whoever got married. And we kind of discussed it because they were asking people to chime in. And so we were talking about it. And I think what you just said about the back door, and once you're in, you're in. With that mindset, for a lot of people, we will be more mindful before we enter into marriage, and then do the work to stay in, because the work goes back to what Javier said. The work is really about yourself. For each person, the work is about yourself. We always talk, when we're talking, you're going to always hear, you guys have said it multiple times here, if you start working on you, then the relationship will be better. So each partner working on themselves, you're going to get better results. You're going to be better. Your marriage is going to be better. And so that is the thing. And back then, you know, a lot of times couples before, there was no divorce. They were going to stay in. They're going to go through it thick and thin, ups and downs, in and outs. They stuck it out. And so if we have that mindset going in, then I think we would not enter it lightly. And we would take our time to make sure that we're choosing wisely. And then even that calls for some work up front to do on yourself. And then you'll be able to produce that power or that strength to be able to say, hey, we can get through this. We can get the work. And I like that. I think that's good.
So going back 28 years ago, what is one thing you wish you would have known when you got married?
So when we started, you know, what you just said in terms of, you know, preparing before marriage, right? Premarital, getting understanding that foundation. And I think it's so vital and so crucial. We spend a lot of time with couples doing that. We have, you know, teams who do that, but we didn't get that. We just got someone like, hey, like, this is going to be a lot of work. Like, you know, just, you know, love God, stay faithful. And he gave us like one tip about sex and off you go. I'm like,
very
generic,
right?
Good one. It was not even a good one. It was
bad.
It was bad. Yeah. And so that start wasn't good. So what I would have known, for me, I think, is just this place of remaining in a place of just being submitted before God at every moment. Because I think for me, like that, I think would have made things a little bit easier because where my faith was, it was strong, but I still hadn't fully like surrendered the relationship with my wife. Like I was still trying to control things.
Yeah.
So I think this place of like letting go of control and not trying to control what needs to happen in year 1 and 2 and what I expected and what I saw and what people had told me, but really understanding like I don't have control over this. Like God, you do.
Yeah.
And I learned that probably in the year 1, like, okay, like this is God's daughter and I'm going to get to love her. And I don't have control of all that's going on, but I do have responsibility and control over how I respond and how I love her and how I image Christ to her on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I can control that.
Yeah.
And I can do that. Everything else I can't. Yeah. But I think that was a big thing for me.
For me, it would have been, I wish somebody would have told me there's no room for your selfishness, Shannan. And the other thing was I put Javier on a pedestal.
I mean, rightly so.
Oh, stop.
It makes sense. So, okay.
Stop. I put Javier on a pedestal and I he became my idol. So when we had some, not cracks in the foundation, but we went through some really rough times, I was left to wrestle with repenting before God and asking God to forgive me because I had forsaken my first love. And I didn't even realize I did it. So those are things I would tell my 19-year-old self who was getting married.
Yeah, we got married pretty young. So it's not like we had it figured out and we didn't know anything, right? We came from a history of good marrijes.
Yeah, over 320 years
from
between all our great grandparents and grandparents.
You know, like no divorce.
Awesome.
Like, so, but there's still, like we tell couples now, they tell, oh yeah, no, I know. No, you don't.
You don't know.
You've never been married.
Never been married.
You don't know. You don't know.
Yeah.
Until you get into it, you really don't know. So it's a great question. It's also like, how do you really truly prepare? Right. I think some foundational things you can do, but ultimately, like you have to walk in surrendered. You have to walk in knowing that this is the most beautiful work you will ever do and the most difficult work you will ever do.
But rewarding.
Right?
Like greatest you'll ever do because it has a generational impact.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. And thinking about your daughters and couples that may have gotten married this year, last year, something that you all would be willing to share, a lesson that 28 years of marriage has taught you.
Independent spirit. Having an independent spirit it does not work in covenant marriage. Now, that doesn't mean that I lose my identity when I married Javier. I am still 100% Shannan with all my fire and all my pizzazz. I didn't lose that, and I can still, but together, what we are a force to be reckoned with. And that's where people, I hear people all the time, well, I don't want to give up my last name. Oh my goodness. It's like, no, you two are coming together to be even stronger and more powerful to influence whatever arena you have, whether it's your neighborhood, it's the business you own, it's a ministry, it's a baseball team, it's a soccer league. It doesn't matter. Like God will use this. So that independent mindset just doesn't work because there's no room for me to do what I want to do. I have two became one. Like there's somebody that I defer to, there's somebody that I invite into decision making. And
for me, I would say two things. So I would tell you, I like be the kind of man she desires to follow.
That's good.
That's good.
That is good. That is good.
And that she desires to follow because,
that's money right there.
There are men wwho talk about, like those who know, like talk about the Proverbs 31 woman, and like she's so amazing. She goes out, talks about her husband, celebrates who he is, like, and if you pause and think about it, right? There's a man behind that woman. There's a man who loves and honors God,
absolutely,
and of integrity and of character, that she wants to go and talk about him.
Yes.
And she is proud of that man because of who he is. So that's my first one. The second one, if I give you two, is like recognizing. So there's a quote that says, like, the problem is really not the problem. How you view the problem is the problem. So it's like your wife is really not the problem, but how you view and think and talk about your wife is probably the problem, right?
Wow.
So telling guys that early on, that they begin to think about this, is like, no, that's not the problem. Like, the problem is you don't want to be uncomfortable. The problem is that you're not seeing her as God sees her. You're not seeing her in your privilege and your honor to serve her, to lay down your life for her. You're not seeing that you have someone who may have hurt and brokenness from her past. And now you get to love her through that. And maybe her hurt and brokenness has caused some issues in the bedroom. So go. You can go find it somewhere else. No, you stay and you fight for her. You fight for her heart, and you recognize that what's going on, you have to lay things down, but then things will shift, right? And things will be restored and healed. But you get to do this with her. So I think when they begin to realize, like, oh, and also it's not so much that it's her, it's me, right? She's just reflecting back at me ways that I haven't maybe loved her, pursued her, chased after her. And so she's just reflecting those things back at me. So what do I need to work through? So when men start to realize, he become that man that she desires to follow, the man of character, of integrity, who honors and loves God first and foremost, then they're blown away that they have wives who say, like, that's sexy. Like, I love that he's on his knees before God.
Yes.
Man who vacuums, a man who reads his word, sexy to his wife, right?
I want you to do something for us. I want you to please share challenges that you faced in your marriage, and how did you flip your marriage?
We haven't faced too much.
Oh, we're so perfect.
And we talk every couple, like, what's the hardest year of marriage? They ask all the time. Well, what's the one you're in, right? Your hardest years of marriage is the one that you're in, right? It's like there's always seasons and moments going on. And the thing is, every 10 years, you evolve to a new version of yourself, right? There's constant change and transition that's going on. And so there are foundational things, of course, I think that can be done. I think for us, like, there's pivotal moments for sure. Our first 5 years were difficult. I grew up in such a way where I struggled with self-esteem and value, and just really just knowing who I was, right? And that I've grown so much in that, of course. But in the early years, that was tough because Shannan didn't really honor that. Shannan liked to say certain things in public that would kind of belittle me and lower me down and elevate herself. And I wasn't trying to control Shannan, but she didn't want to be controlled. No one's going to tell her what to do, right? Tell them the theme song to your life, to yours.
Oh, it's Billy Joel's My Life. Yes.
Yeah. I don't care what you say anymore.
This is my life.
Right?
Go
that
ahead.
was that one.
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
That was her theme song. And so that's what I walked into. And so those first number of years were difficult, but I think the decision I made, and I don't know how I knew this, at somebody who was 20 years old, getting married young, and I knew from my father seeing him and how he had raised me, but I knew that I was called to love her, full stop. It wasn't, I'm called to love you if, I'm called to love you when, I'm called to love you if I get A, B, and C. It was like, I am called to love you, and in loving you, that's everything that comes with it. And I'm going to cover you, and I'm going to pursue you, and I'm going to serve you. And there are days and moments where it was difficult. It was hard. I was tired. I was exhausted, but I kept pursuing. I kept moving towards her. I didn't pull back. And I think because of that, that changed and shifted and transformed her. And when you fast forward, I'll tell you really quick, in the season of my life, when we had started a church, we merged a church, it didn't go well, and we had to leave that, and I hit a wall. I really got to a place where depression. I kind of hit depression. I hit burnout in ministry after 15 years, and I felt empty, like I had nothing left to give. And I hit this wall. And here was Shannan now on the reverse, right? In a moment when I couldn't love her, in a moment where I felt I was empty and nothing left to give, that she radically loved me, radically served me, radically invested into me. She would cry in the shower without me ever knowing. I didn't know until 5 years later that she would cry in the shower, praying, releasing that, just so the girls and I wouldn't see it. And so those moments like shifted and transformed. And I think they changed us because we made a decision in those moments that there was no option but to believe the best in each other, pursue one another, to fight for one another, and to stand in the gap for one another. And so there was no option. And I think when you make that decision, that regardless of what we face, the enemy's not going to come in, rob, steal, or destroy from our marriage, right? From the testimony. Because here's the thing, our marriage and our story is not about us. Right? glory to God, that other people, that our lives would be the greatest testimony of his grace, of his mercy, of who he is. That we are the biggest testimony of what God's love looks like.
Do you want a pulpit?
So, those moments for at least for me have like transformed our marriage. There's been several others, but like for me, those were the two highlights.
And I would say that the cherry on top to that, what you just said, and you just can't leave this out, and I know you guys will agree with me, is community. Like we have community. We have people who are pro-marriage, who are pro Javier and Shannan, who are we can say, but they're like, nope, go home, find your marriage. And we had pastors who mentored us at a very young age, who accepted me right where I was at, but challenged me in that Proverbs 31 woman and said, Shannan, I love you, but we got to get your act together. We got to tidy up here a little bit.
Yeah.
Wasn't afraid to be confrontational, and community. God did not create us to do life on an island. Yeah. So you have to have those friends who can pour into you, that you're pouring into.
The right people who will speak truth, not the ones who are going to agree with you when you complain about your spouse.
Yes.
The ones who tell you need to stop that. You need to go back, repent. Right? Well, I've fallen out of love with them. No, we tell people, you haven't fallen out of love. You've fallen out of repentance. You're not willing to go back. You're not willing to go and deal with your stuff right now. So don't tell me you've fallen out of love. Right? Maybe you don't like them right now. That's cool. Yeah. Not your favorite person.
Hey, listen, there are times when I don't like you.
Yeah, it's very true.
And I know that. And you don't like me, but I always love you.
Yes.
And there's a difference.
Yes.
Absolutely. This is awesome. Awesome. We both have our notepads over here. This is awesome. Yeah. We thank you guys for sharing with TMC. Wow. We thank you guys for being open, for being transparent. And we thank you guys for what you are doing on the mission field of marriages. We definitely will be praying for you that God will continue to provide everything that you need to continue to travel throughout the states and help married people everywhere. Everything that you've said, everything that you've shared is great nuggets for someone. And we know that you all are out there coaching couples, coaching individuals, and making marriages better. So we want to thank you all for doing that. And so as we're preparing to close, if you could tell the TMC listeners, if they wanted to get connected with you, where would they go?
Sure. We love to hear from people that tune into podcasts, and we love to respond to everybody we can get back to. But you can find us at 247 Marriage on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. At 247 Marriage, it's the same handler name for all of them. And you can find us there, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. And our website is 247marriage.org. And there's a lot of great information. We have a section called free downloads. So there's some free downloads that are going to help you in your marriage right now. So please check those out. I think that's it. Yeah,
DM, or even the email was info@247marriage.org.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely be sure to share all of your contact information in the show notes so that everyone that desires to connect with you all can do so.
On behalf of the TMC community, we want to thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you guys for the work you're doing, for doing this podcast. This is essential. This is so important because we need so many people out on this mission field, impacting, changing, and transforming marriages. So thank you for what you're doing.
If this is your first time joining us, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified when we upload a video every week. If you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. And we want to invite you to head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing entrepreneurs and great leaders every week.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.